Hello and welcome back to another episode of Chatting with Slava the Jordanian. I'm your host, as a lot of you know me through my social Instagram and Facebook as STJ. We are very excited today for this episode. This is a special episode, part of the Discovering Palestinian Intellects series on the Mindset Mastery Moments platform. As a reminder, these episodes is to encourage the guests to share their stories with us, to inspire us as American Arab immigrants that left their home world, coming to the new world, to empower other generations that want to displace themselves by default or by design to a new world. And we are so privileged today to have a guest with us, very, very special guest, Dr. Maher Massis. And before we start, let me give you a short bio of his background. Dr. Maher Massis is the president of New Dominion PAC, board member of the Coalition of Palestinian-American Organizations. He's a board member of the Palestinian Christian Alliance for Peace. He has a Ph.D. in International Relations and Master's in International Relations and Law, Master's in Clinical Mental Health. He is the founder and the owner of Massis Properties, LLC, and he's an author and editor of Poems for Palestine, available on Amazon, and contributing writer to the Middle East Report, Jordan Times, Mandawi's, and Palestine Chronicle Arab Studies Quarterly. He does live news broadcasting as a guest interviewer at ITV24 News, Turkish News, and Palestine TV. So, without further ado, Dr. Maher Massis.
Well, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
The inspiration of Discovering Palestinian Intellects was by the article written by Anne Ephraim on Columbia Press on August 23rd, 2023, titled, Why Palestinians known as the world's best educated refugees. And when I came across that article, everything that I've known and everything that I believed in came crashing together in a very good way. And it dawned on me to say, hold on a second, we are more than 10 living refugees. Because the world looks at us as we're just refugees crammed in a tent, in a refugee camp somewhere in occupied territories, and we have no aspirations, we have no dreams, we have no goals, and we just the kind of people that go where we are told to go, do what we are told to do, keep your head down so you don't be part of the clash or the controversy. So of course I went down the rabbit hole with the research, came to the idea we need to celebrate that, we need to address that, we need to advocate that we are more than 10 living refugees. And that's why you're here, and thank you so much for joining us today. I guess the first question is, what is the story of your journey that brought you here to the United States, and whether you were displaced by design, meaning that it was a subconscious effort of your own, harsh circumstances that really pushed you to displace yourself, or the other way around, were you displaced by default, meaning that you had no other choice but to flee and leave and seek a new world, a new life?
Well, thank you so much for your insights. And I think this is really the story of the Palestinian people collectively. They have many different experiences, but soon, we will find that there are also similarities as well. My story really began with my father, who in 1956 or 1957, he went to Saudi Arabia and began to work over there. And the plan was for him to just work for a couple of years, make some money, and then come back to our village in Taiba. Taiba was a small town near Ramallah, and it was mainly a farm area. a lot of olive trees, and so people were more, living in a rural type of environment. And then 1967 happened. Israel invaded the West Bank, and Taiba is in the West Bank, and the harsh conditions of occupation, which accompanied economic deprivation, led to a change of plans for my father. So instead of coming back to the West Bank, he realized that he had no choice but to stay inside inside Arabia and work and make money to support his family. And so I was born inside Arabia, and I learned my work ethic from my father, who worked long hours, worked for Aramco, and then after his work days, he would teach English in the evening, and he would just do other, opportunities that would enable him to make more money. And so money at that time was viewed not as an instrument of luxury. His interest wasn't, oh, I want to buy a nice car. It was basically survival mode. It was survival. Money gives a person a sense of security. And so he worked hard and managed to supplement his large family, his brothers and sisters and his parents in Taiba to be able to survive the harsh conditions. And I was in a way lucky that I grew up in Dahran, which had great schools. And at a very young age, education was instilled in us. My mother and father wanted me to get a good education. My father just finished high school, so he didn't get a chance to go to college. But he recognized that under the circumstances that we were living in, and in Saudi Arabia, we are not Saudis. We're still guests. We're not Saudis, although Saudi Arabia was a country that opened its arms for many Palestinians in those early days to help them. And so I went to school in Dahran, and Dahran didn't have high school. And so I really had no choice but to leave the country and came to the U.S. and finished my high school, and then ultimately obtained my Ph.D. And for me, getting an education was something that I felt I needed to accomplish for myself, but there was also a political dimension to it, that I felt a collective responsibility that as a Palestinian, I may not be able to fight. I didn't go to Lebanon to fight the 1982 war, for example, but I can use my education kind of like a weapon, but to really educate my fellow Americans about the plight of the Palestinian people. And of course, the reality is the higher the educational level you have, the more credibility you get in speaking about Palestine. And that's why I decided that I needed to get my PhD to be able to have access and the credibility to give the Palestinian narrative in a way that Americans would truly understand.
It's a small world because I was born in Saudi. I was born in Jeddah in 1969. And from a lot of the Palestinians I'm meeting here in the United States, or even the Palestinians that I met when I was in Egypt, it's the same story. We try to go back home, but we get rejected because of who we are. And rejection is a redirection, so it will redirect our destiny to go somewhere else. At that moment, we might feel so rejected to the point that we develop something we call approval addiction. We become very addicted, some of us, to get approved by the new society, by the new world that we embark on, And the funny things, 80% of the people that I met, the fuel that really fed their engine is the passion for higher education. For example, in September 2018, a report from the Palestinian Central Bureau of Statistics found that Palestinians have one of the highest literacy rates in the world. So what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to tap into that passion that Palestinians have for education. And you touched a little bit on it because your circumstances, when they become very limiting to the resources that you need to have a better life, then you start looking outside of your world in order to seek what you're trying to seek. And like you said, that education is the license out. Education is the key that opens a lot of doors for us to have a position in society, to have a socioeconomical identity, to have a voice for us to advocate. And here we are sitting in front of a camera on a social platform, which it can be heard all around the world and available to whomever wants to be inspired to talk about these things. And we are very privileged to do so. But again, we had to go through the process of life in order to get here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, it was important to come to the United States. When as a people, our freedom has been taken away.
Yeah.
And the reality is that in the Arab world, freedoms are limited. And I really wanted to be free to express my opinion. And I felt that the United States was the place to be, although now we do have some challenges. But I found, inspiration in the works and speeches of Martin Luther King. The way he spoke, the way he acted, inspired a lot of people. Not that I wanted to really be a Martin Luther King, but I felt that the United States is a country that I could really not just excel in my education, but it is a country that historically has supported Israel. And if we are going to help the Palestinian people, then fundamentally we need to change U.S. foreign policy. And we need to do that through the democratic process. And so I was very much aware of how important it is to understand the political system in the United States. And I was fascinated that here we have 50 states, and you don't need a passport from one state to another state. And I remember in high school, I went to visit my brother. I was in Kansas, and I went to visit my brother in I believe in Arizona at that time. It was during the Thanksgiving break. And when I landed at the airport, I pulled out my passport and I was looking around for immigration control, and I couldn't understand, where is the immigration? And so, it just really was something that was so unique that in such a vast country with 50 states, we don't need a passport.
My dad preached for that all the time. As you know, my dad has a Ph.D. in literature from one of the universities in California. I don't remember which one. He was a political analyst and a world-renowned writer. And he always talked about the importance of education, the importance of arming yourself with that shield in order for people to say, okay, you're educated enough, you do have a voice, you're educated enough, you do have a position in society that you're doing something good, okay, we're going to listen to you. Because as an immigrant, we have two options when we move, when we immigrate, either to fully assimilate into the new society, or we can just use that new world as a labor camp, just a working camp to make money in order to send home and to help our family, but still adapt a very traditional values or beliefs and then, work, send the money, and then go back home, if you can go back home. And unfortunately, with a lot of Palestinians, they cannot go back home. I learned that fact recently, which I didn't realize that after 1948 that you couldn't go back home. Can you share with our audience and our viewers, why do you think our passion for education stems from? Is it because of our circumstances, or is it because we have this innate curiosity about the world? And do you think that if Nakba did not happen in Palestine, would the Palestinian continue to push towards education as much as they're pushing right now with these circumstances?
Yeah. I think if you look at it historically, Palestine before in 1948, education was important. One of the best educational institutions were in Palestine. So we had already had this, innate, cultural aspect of ours where education is important, even before the Nakba. When the Nakba happened, it just went at a higher level. For example, I mentioned that for me, my education is I wanted to get involved in the political process. But you don't have to really become a Ph.D. in political science to assert yourself in terms of having an identity. I am a Palestinian-American. I just happen to be interested in political science, but look at all the accomplishments that your father did, and there are many people that are Palestinian-Americans that are successful, whether they're poets, whether they're entrepreneurs, whether they are well-respected surgeons. They may not be involved in the political space, but asserting one's identity is in and of itself political in a way, because if you are, let's say, a highly successful doctor and people know that, this person is originally from Palestine, look how well educated that person is, look at his manners or her manners, that in and of itself defends our Palestinian identity, because as you know, there is and there has been a systematic effort to try to deny the existence of the Palestinian people, that we're just Arabs who tried to come in after 1948. We're not just Arabs, we are proud Arabic-speaking Palestinians. We have our own unique culture and history. Our food is even unique. Our poetry, I loved reading Palestinian poetry, and 90%, I would say, of Palestinian poetry is about the experience of being in the diaspora. And so the collective experience of the Palestinian people also reflects a sense of resilience. We have a cultural aspect of wanting to get an education, but also education is also a foundation of resilience. I feel resilient because I have an education. If I didn't have an education, I honestly wouldn't feel empowered. I wouldn't feel the resilience that I'm feeling right now. And so I think, to answer your question about why is there this innate need to get an education, it's because of asserting our identity as a people, and to be able to have the resilience to always uphold our identity, and to educate our fellow Americans, or if they are in Europe, our fellow Europeans in the diaspora, has a responsibility to educate people about our narrative, our true narrative.
I agree with you 100%, and that was the inspiration behind these series, Discovering Palestinian Intellects. Just like the world is so busy about poor people, that's fine, I get it, circumstances, things happen out of our control, But I want to shift the awareness and shift the attention of the world. Look what we have created from this adversity and the life of despair and trauma. We have created something that is beautiful by maintaining, number one, our culture, maintaining our strong belief and value systems, which I carry on my shoulder every time I conduct myself with anybody. We draw from our pride. We draw from our beautiful, colorful culture with storytelling too. And that's why I incorporated that aspect of who we are and our culture into this podcast by telling our stories, and allow the viewers or the listeners impartially and without judgment, without bias, to judge for yourself, are we worthy the attention and the acknowledgement and the advocation? So when you talk to Irish people with all their struggles and challenges, the Polish people with their struggles and challenges, even the Eastern European countries that, got let go after the USSR got dissolved, they are constantly working to advocate for themselves and say that we are not under only that umbrella of stereotype or the stigma of the fact that we just live in tents and we don't know culture, we don't know music, we don't know poetry, we don't know science, we don't know medicine. And I do it with on Instagram with the DPI, kind of a clippets of some of the Palestinian entrepreneurs or scientists or professionals that impacted the world in one way or the other, in order to say, yes, there is this, but also we are that.
Yeah, and I think the Palestinians are a bit unique than other people in the world. And that is that we have a country called Palestine that's under occupation. And they don't even want to recognize Palestine. They want to consider the West Bank as Judean Samaria. And so our unique trauma, and I believe you hit it on the nail when you called it trauma, our collective trauma is so intense that we don't have much of a choice. It's not a matter of, should I get an education or not? Really, for me, it wasn't a choice. And I think for the overwhelming majority of Palestinian people, it's not a matter of choice. It's a matter of necessity, that you succeed in everything you do. If you want to get a higher degree, you do it. If you want to become a poet, then you become the greatest poet you can become. If you want to become a surgeon, if you want to be an entrepreneur, if you want to be a cook, be the greatest cook. We have this innate desire that we must not just succeed, but excel in everything that we do, because our mere existence as a people is at threat. And now it's even more profound than ever before. And so that is what I think is unique about our experience as refugees in the diaspora, is asserting our identity and our pride as a people. And we're not going to disappear.
When I left Saudi Arabia, I had two options: either go back to Jordan, come to the United States for education. I knew I wanted to go to dental school, so instead of starting in Jordan and then end up in the United States, I just came to the States. And my dad was the first feminist I ever met in my life, and he was a libertarian and all about, equal rights and civil liberties. And he looked at me, he goes, listen, you can go to the moon. I don't really care. I trust you. Do your thing. But no matter what you go through, no matter where you are, no matter how old you are, don't ever forget where you came from. And my dad was a man of few words. I know he was a writer, but it was all creative writing. He was not the type of person that to sit you down and lecture you about life. But if you needed his advice, he just spit out wisdom. And I carried that with me when I came to the United States. But as a female, it's like, who cares who I'm from? I'm just here to go to dental school. But after I graduated and owned a business, became a partner, became a professional, working with the public for 26 years, I had to remind myself that this is my belief system. And it's funny how these values and beliefs, as you get older, they kind of surface a little bit, almost like God or the universe is trying to tell you that you need this right now. You need to actually advocate for that right now. But as an immigrant in general, do you believe that we have the tendency to overperform, to compensate for the lack of awareness, for the lack of acknowledgement, and for us to overshine above and beyond in order to be seen or to be heard?
Yes, absolutely. And, this could be a psychological condition. We overcompensate. A person that, has an experience at a young age that, can cause somebody to really feel they need to overcompensate. I'm not sure if I want to call it overcompensate. I would say it's going on a trajectory of not just being successful, but being above and beyond being successful. We are compensating in the sense that we're not just refugees, like you mentioned. And I'm not interested in people to really just show sympathy. Oh, we're so sorry that you're a refugee. No, I want people to understand who we are, where we came from, to respect our values, and to also join us, to join our collective effort in pursuing, freedom and liberation for Palestine. And so, you can look at it as overcompensation from a psychological perspective, but I think from a cultural and political perspective, it is absolutely necessary that we excel in everything we do. For me, I don't, I have the sense that, if somebody is more educated than I am, then I'm not going to be able to be in a position to communicate with that person about Palestine. Being invited as a guest speaker on various television and newscasts. If I didn't have a Ph.D., I don't think I would be able to have that opportunity. So I see that as a platform to be able to reach wider audiences in educating people about who we are.
My dad used to say, higher education is your invitation to the party. And that's...
Exactly. That's a perfect way of saying it. That makes a lot of sense.
So your invitation to the party to educate, to mingle, to exchange ideas, to be with like-minded people, it's a privilege that you will have, but you won't be able to obtain that without education. And I don't put it like you have a title, but your title reflects on your awareness, your knowledge, your expertise, your experience. And when people hear that, they'll be interested in, I want to hear more, I want to hear about that. What do you think? And you start exchanging ideas, and before you know it, will dissolve that stigma. Oh, poor you, you're just a refugee. Oh, I feel real bad what happened to you. But no, we're more than that. Look Absolutely. What we have done, right, with that trauma. Look what we have done with this toxic stress that we've been living in multi-generation on. If you would recognize one personality, one character, one person in your life through that journey that really impacted doing what you do every single day right now, who would that be?
I would have to say my father and mother. My father was just, he was like your father in the sense he was just, I have two sisters, and, he treated, the boys and girls equally. Mm-hmm. And he just was just the most supportive and encouraging human being on earth. I told him I wanted to get my bachelor's. Absolutely. Master's, absolutely. Ph.D., absolutely. He was always there to support me and respected my independent decisions. He never would say, well, all the sons of my friends are becoming engineers. Why don't you become an engineer? He never once said that to me. He respected my independence. And so I will, always cherish his memory. And also my mother as well. My mother was a homemaker, but she sure worked and cooked and took care of us and gave us love and attention. I really didn't see my father that much because, again, after work, he would work at night. And I understood, I missed him a lot, but I understood the need of why he is really a workaholic. And so I respected him and admired him for that. But my mother was always there, again, to support us. I have to say that the political side of me came from my mother. My father was all about making money. And again, making money to support his family and to give a sense of security. My mother always had this small black radio next to her ear and listening to the news. And ever since I was a kid, I would ask her, what are you listening to? What's happening? And instead of her saying, oh, no, this is not important, to just, tell me, to not bother me, she actually would take the time, she would sit me down and explain to me what's happening. Even, if there are, bad things like violence. So I just heard that your cousin had his legs broken by the Israeli army, during the Intifadas. And so she just was very open and informative about everything that's happening. And of course, at that time, there was no internet, right? And so the information that I was getting was through my mother. And then, of course, later I started listening to the radio and learning more and just educating myself about the situation. And the moral values were instilled in me by both my mother and father, and now I am instilling those same values to my children as well. Yeah. So both my mother and father were the ones that have really inspired me throughout my life.
They sound like an amazing people. And that's the thing about our parents. They did not sugarcoat anything. They were realists, and they called it tough love. But it's tough.
and it's interesting that you say that, because talking to other people, other fellow Palestinians, the parents are the same.
Yes.
And I think, I'm not sure if it was purposeful or it was just the nature of our people, that we needed to be tough at a very young age.
Yes.
And I think maybe our parents realized that, I'm raising children in a world where we have no nation, we have no country. We are refugees. Even in Arab countries, we are refugees. We don't have rights like other citizens. And they, instilled in us the importance of education, but also tough love as well. That we got to be tough in a tough world.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting that you mentioned this, and I realize that it's prevalent with all the Palestinians.
Absolutely. I mean, our household in Saudi was very much Palestinian Jordanian. My mom, as a Jordanian, she's from Asalt, the tribes of Jordan. They lived, the Palestinian challenge all their lives. And my grandfather was the liaison between the Asalt being the first town, basically, when you cross the border from the West Bank into Jordan. So he was one of the liaison that had to police the refugees coming through in the middle of the night and find them homes and find them job and spread them around Jordan. He used to go to Amman, for the meetings, the parliaments, and trying to figure out where they can place them in schools, jobs, trade schools. And my dad, Nabilsi, they've been in Jordan since the 1800, before during
well-respected family.
Thank you. During the Ottoman Empire, they were from Middle Syria originally, and they became mercenaries for the Ottoman Empire army to fight to reoccupy the mountain of Jordan, Jabal al-Urdun, and then they basically settled in Palestine, in Nablus, and became Nabilsi. They took the name, and then they moved to Jordan. But even when my dad proposed to my mom, her dad said, absolutely not, no Palestinian. My mom's like, what are you talking about? You're you save Palestinians. You make it happen for them, possible for them. He goes, no, that's just my belief system. So my father had to drag Sulaiman Nabilsi, who was the prime minister, all the way up to SALT to basically facilitate the whole engagement thing, and said, hey, listen, I will guarantee that this kid is okay, good to go. They went to school, elementaries together in the SALT. So the families knew each other, Al-Azab and Nabilsi. But when it came to the fact that, my child is marrying a Palestinian, Beit Nabilsi, and my grandkids is going to be half Palestinian, he had to think twice about it, my grandfather. It's fascinating how it was my grandfather's duty to help the Palestinian, but when it came too close to home, he had to think twice about it. So but my dad is the one who had the tough love, sat us down, just like your mom. You need to understand what's going on. My first memory of the horrific images that it was in our black and white TV was 1973 or 75. And I sat next to my dad. My dad's watching the news, and here there are two Israeli soldiers with a 14-year-old boy that threw a rock at them, and they held his arm on a big rock, and they were crushing it with the rock that he threw at them to teach him a lesson not to throw rocks at the authority. So I just cried hysterically, and I said, Dad, what is going on? He goes, this is every day. And he grabbed me, he sat me down next to him. He goes, no, you need to watch this, and you need to promise me never to forget this. Our household became a household that you are rather be right than to be loved. Being right and doing the right thing because it's the thing to do, and stand up for bullies and stand up for humanity was always part of the atmosphere in our house. Do you relate to that at all?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I would never insulate my daughters from all that's going on. I want them to see the misery of the people. Even if they start crying, that's okay. You need to know, you need to see, you need to feel. Yes, you need to cry and feel the pain. And that just really makes us more human, right? We can't just ignore what's happening. And if you look at the recent protests in these past year or 2 years, something has shifted with the Palestinian identity. It's not just right now a nationalistic identity. Me being a Palestinian isn't just about, oh, I've got the Palestinian flag that represents who I am. Being a Palestinian represents values that crosses socioeconomic lines, crosses racial lines. Look at all the protests. The last big protest that I participated in Washington, D.C., the overwhelming majority of people are non-Arab, non-Palestinian, non-Muslim, Christians, whites, African Americans, Jewish Americans. And you see a lot of people around the world, when they wear the keffiyeh around them, it's not saying that I am a Palestinian, because my blood is Palestinian. They're saying I'm a Palestinian because I believe in the values of freedom, of justice, of equality. And we're able to succeed at this point in history, because of what your father did, your parents did, what my parents did, what you are doing, what I'm doing, and what we as parents are going to be doing for our children. Mm-hmm. And so, we have succeeded in creating a worldwide human rights movement. Mm-hmm. And so being a Palestinian is no longer a national identity. It is a movement for liberation, freedom, and justice.
I agree with you 100%. And I always say with every crisis, there's an opportunity. And I don't want the viewers or the listeners to take that as something that's egotistic in any way. But that's just the way I was raised. Like, rejection is a redirection. So it is a crisis. It's unfortunate. It's beyond what human mind can even fathom or endure. But like you said, it's becoming a consciousness, a humanity consciousness around the world that people need to know why and what and how things are happening over there. So, but it doesn't change the fact that we do have that innate, unlimited mindset by eliminating limited beliefs that we can't do this, right? So don't ever tell me you can't do this, because if you tell me you can't do this, it just, my blood boils and I'm just going to do it and even more of it, because that's what it takes in order to adapt an unlimited mindset by eliminating limited beliefs that don't limit yourself. And despite the fact that I'm half Palestinian, you're 100% Palestinian, as an immigrant, as an American immigrants that came from, like I said, either displaced by design or displaced by default, it doesn't really matter. We come to this new world, and if you don't master a mindset, failure is not an option. That's what my parents taught me. Failure is not an option. Oh, exactly. Not having education is not an option. Not climbing the mountain is not an option. It's not an option. It's just not an option. So get it out of your head that there is an option for you to quit. Quitting is not an option. Giving up is not an option. So when you carry that mindset with you as an immigrant, an Arab or Palestinian immigrant coming in, that is your belief system that really constitute how you conduct yourself in that new world. So it's fascinating when you are young and you're pursuing a degree and I want this, I want a better life, and you think you have let go of that belief system, but in fact, it is what made you today. And I'm coming to that realization, especially after hitting 50 and settling down a little bit and being my career for the over 25 years. When you settle down, those values that were fundamental principles of who you are, they start surfacing, right? I don't have children. Having children, probably you get to practice that a lot more. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you really hit it on the nail. There's no such thing as plan B for us Palestinians, wherever we are. We have to succeed. And, when I went to high school in Kansas, this is the first time I came to the United States, and I ended up in a Catholic boarding school in the middle of Kansas. And it was in a town where people rarely met foreigners. And so I did experience discrimination. I was called all sorts of names just by walking the street. I was, cursed at. Even in school, I was bullied a little bit for being from, a different place. And the way I looked at it is, I can handle it. What's my option? To just, go in my room and cry and feel sad? No. Mm-hmm. I'll be even more committed to succeed in what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And I kept on having Martin Luther King's thought process. Mm-hmm. Because Martin Luther King, when he would approach an opponent, and his opponent would call him all sorts of names, he wouldn't just run away. He would try to convince that person his point of view. And that's what I try to do. If a person called me a name because of where I came from, I really wouldn't resent that person. I would, in my mind, think, well, he doesn't know. He just doesn't know. And I would put an effort to try to educate that person. But I also wanted to say something else that's important, that we talked about, us as Palestinians being educated and how our identity has really become transformed into a movement that everybody can identify with. For me, it was also important that on the individual, personal level, that we express our values. Like, for example, it's not enough that I educate my friend about who we are as Palestinians, but for me to be a good person, for me to be an honest person, for me to care about my community, to care about people. People may call it to assimilate, and there's nothing wrong with assimilation. And you can't assimilate while maintaining your identity as a Palestinian. But it's also important for people to look at you and say, wow, this is a good person. And then when they know that you are a Palestinian, they can take you more seriously and they'll respect you even more. So I cannot tell you how many times I've had people come up to me and telling me, oh, you're a Palestinian? Yes. Guys, it's like all the Palestinians that I met are such nice people and highly educated. And so just being a good person in and of itself really serves an important purpose to really show people that who we really are as a people, not only collectively, but also on an individual basis.
I believe, and I read this somewhere, that a person that conducts themselves with a high level of dignity is a person that respects themselves, respects the people around them, and the space that they occupy. Whether that space is given to you or a space that you have created for yourself from education, experience, entrepreneurship, business owning, if you do not respect your opponent enough that you're willing to educate that opponent in order to understand you a little bit better. And of course, you have a background in psychology. The anxiety is the fear of the unknown. That's what makes us anxious, right? So we are in our grid, which is our belief system. And humans have the tendency to go through life looking for the proof that will confirm that belief system in order for us to stay in the grid. Now, it can become a limited mindset. So in order to open your mind, look outside that grid, beyond your belief system, experience certain things, and you can modify that as you are immigrating or migrating from one place to another in order, like you said, to assimilate, but you assimilate in a healthier way.
Exactly.
Because our mindset is like an outlet. So we are wired in a certain way, and that's our belief system. In order for us to plug our belief system in a different society, we need that adapter. It's just an adapter for your iPhone or your computer. If you don't have that adapter that can go in the socket of the new culture and society, then you find yourself stumbling a lot more, being challenged a lot more. Things are taking a lot longer to get done. You're not achieving what you want to achieve fast enough. Okay, hold on a second. I need to change my approach, just like Martin Luther King has done, in order for that person to understand who I am. If they understand and know who I am, the anxiety is going to drop, because then they are not in the unknown, they are in the know. And that's the beauty of the social media platform these days, to give us the opportunity to actually educate and inform whoever perceiving us as living refugees that we are more than that. But they will not be able to come to that realization if we don't do our job educating them, informing them, and breaking through that barrier and say, hey, I'm just like you, I'm just human. I have different values and belief system, but it doesn't mean that we cannot coexist, co-create, or co-regulate together.
Yeah, that makes sense. And also, the benefit of understanding the society that you live in, understanding your fellow Americans, puts you in a better position in knowing how you can explain your narrative. Like, I can just give you an example of what I've used for so many years, whether I'm sitting on an airplane with a passenger. People don't have a long attention span. If I tell them, oh, I'm originally from Palestine, oh, what's happening over there? Well, imagine me telling them, well, back in, the Balfour Declaration, and then Nakba, and then 1956, 67, people are not going to pay attention.
Yeah.
But understanding what they value is important in educating them. For example, I would tell a person, well, let us suppose that a thief came and stole a watch from somebody. What do you think of that? Well, that's theft. That's against the law. But do you think it's just? Besides the law, but do you think it's just or unjust? Well, of course it's unfair, it's unjust. Okay, so you see that objectively. Now, what if a thief came and stole your watch? Your watch, that I see that you're wearing a nice watch. How would you feel about that? I would feel, upset. Okay, what if a person steals your watch and steals your car, steals your home, and steals the homes of all your neighbors and throws you out in the middle of the desert to live in tents in Nevada? How would you really feel? I would feel, gosh, that this is such a disaster. It's so much injustice, unfair. I'd be so upset, angry. Why isn't the world doing anything? Then I would respond by saying, well, congratulations, you've become a Palestinian. So, part of assimilating and understand their values and their thought process and using it to connect to the Palestinian narrative is important. Psychology, thoughts create emotions, right? And it's very important in talking about the Palestinian narrative that they just don't understand it, but they feel it as well. And so that's why this example that I gave you, I personalized it because I want them to feel. People will not get it until they actually feel it. Yes. It's the experience of the Palestinian people shouldn't be an academic exercise. It should be an exercise of understanding the facts and feeling the collective experience of the Palestinian people at the same time.
I agree with you 100%. When you dehumanize a human, you're not God. Nobody should have the power to dehumanize anybody. But because, unfortunately, the misinformation, stereotype, stigma, all kind of unjust things that's happening in the world, you dehumanize people, but they're human. If you go back to, I think, Germanic or Latin, it's a person of earth. And since we are all living on earth, we are humans. So whether we speak Arabic or we practice Islam, Christianity, or Judaism, or speak Italian or Spanish, it doesn't really matter. We're still human. We're made of the same thing. So I was going to ask you, since we are coming to the end of our hour, unfortunately, what would be your best advice for a young Palestinian that is thinking of embarking and leaving home, displacing themselves and coming to the United States?
Leaving doesn't mean that you're no longer a Palestinian. If a person, from whatever the circumstances are, is coming from Palestine, it doesn't make you less of a Palestinian if you leave and move here to the United States. My daughters have never been to Palestine, but I can tell you they know more, I wouldn't say more, but they know enough about Palestine as if they have been living in Palestine. And so do not be afraid to come to the United States or Europe and and focus on the best that you can be as a human being in all of its aspects. From a value perspective, be a good person. Be a good person for your family, be a good person for your people, be a good person for your fellow citizens, whether they're British or German or Americans, and excel in the thing that you are interested in. If you love poetry, then do poetry. If you love being a cook, then do it the best. Always do it the best. And it's not something to be, thinking, this is being egotistical, that, you want to be the best. You want to be the best because of whom we are. We are Palestinians, and there are people out there that they want to deny our existence as a people. And being your best asserts our identity as a people, and it is just a matter of no choice. There is no plan B, as we discussed earlier. You have to be the best in everything that you do and be resilient, no matter what the objections are. I think the world now understands that the Palestinian people are not just the most educated people in the world, but they're the most resilient people on earth. We never give up. We never give up.
Never.
And that's really the focus that I would tell them to do, just to focus on that.
Thank you so much. That was put absolutely beautifully. And I hope you agree to come back, Dr. Massis.
Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasant discussion with you, and I'm so honored to be on your program. Thank you so much.
Oh, you are more than welcome. And I'm sure when you come back, would love to pick your brain on the psychology behind it, the eco-social factors of resilience, steadfastness, strength, where we draw our support from the divine or from our traditional tribal connection that we have as Palestinians. So, as a reminder, these episodes are going to be uploaded on all social media platforms, on Spotify, Apple, and also on the Greenwood Dental Partners YouTube channel, in order to have it available for you to listen to it and watch it whenever you are ready to do so. Thank you so much for joining us. This platform is all about storytelling, since our culture is very, very nostalgic and very much a storytelling culture. Please leave your comment, questions, or any topic that you would like us to discuss in the upcoming episodes in the comment below. And I am gonna put Dr. Massis' bio in the link below if you would like to reach out to him. He's such a graceful guest. We're very, very honored to have you, Dr. Massis. Thank you so much for your time. And I can't believe it's been an hour. Like I said, it went by so fast.
We can talk for days about this. It is such an honor to be with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I hope you guys join us on the next episode. Thank you so much for listening and watching. This is Slava the Jordanian.